Entitled Karen calls 911 on me for farming my own land, regrets everything in under 5 minutes. The sun hung low over the rolling hills of my farm, painting the sky in streaks of orange and pink. I leaned against my shovel, wiping sweat from my brow, the scent of freshly turned earth filling my lungs. This was my sanctuary, a 20-acre plot I'd inherited from my grandfather, who'd worked this land with his bare hands until the day he died. Every clod of dirt, every sprouting seedling, felt like a piece of him still alive. I was planting rows of corn, the kind he swore by golden bantam, sweet as summer itself. The rhythm of the work was meditative: dig, plant, cover, repeat. But that piece shattered the moment she appeared. Her name was Karen. Not a nickname, not a stereotype, at least, not yet. She was my new neighbor, having moved into the McMansion that sprouted up last month on the adjacent property. I'd seen her a few times, power walking in neon leggings, her phone glued to her ear, her voice carrying over the fence like a megaphone. I'd waved once. She didn't wave back. Figured she was just city folk, adjusting to the quiet. I didn't know she was a ticking time bomb. That morning, I was knee-deep in my work when I heard her. "Excuse me. Excuse me." Her voice sliced through the air, sharp and indignant. I turned to see her marching across the boundary line, her arms crossed, her blonde bob bouncing with every furious step. She wore a pristine white tracksuit, which seemed like a bold choice for stomping through a field. Her eyes locked on me like I was a criminal caught red-handed. "You need to stop this immediately," she snapped, pointing at my shovel as if it were a loaded gun. "This is my view you're ruining." I blinked, confused. "Ma'am, this is my land. I'm planting corn, same as I do every year." "Your land," she scoffed, her voice dripping with condescension. "I bought this property for the aesthetic, and your little dirt piles are an eyesore. I can't have my yoga retreats looking out at this." She gestured wildly at my neatly tilled rows, as if they were a landfill. I tried to keep my cool. Grandpa always said patience was a farmer's best tool. "With all due respect, ma'am, I've got every right to farm here. Been doing it for years. You can check the property lines." Her face twisted, her lips pursing like she'd bitten a lemon. "I don't need to check anything. I know my rights. And I'm calling the police if you don't stop right now." I laughed. I couldn't help it. The idea of cops showing up to arrest me for planting corn on my own land was absurd. "Go ahead," I said, shrugging. "They'll tell you the same thing." Big mistake. Karen's eyes narrowed to slits. She whipped out her phone, dialed 911, and put it on speaker, as if she wanted the whole county to hear her triumph. "Yes, hello. I need an officer immediately," she said, her voice suddenly syrupy with fake distress. "Ascent true. I'm calling the sheriff." I went back to my planting, shaking my head. The corn wasn't going to sow itself, and I figured she'd cool off once she realized how ridiculous she sounded. But 10 minutes later, a sheriff's cruiser rolled up my dirt driveway, lights flashing. I wiped my hands on my jeans and walked over, half amused, half annoyed. Karen was standing at the edge of my property, arms crossed, smirking like she'd already won. Sheriff Danvers stepped out, a grizzled man who'd known my family for decades. He tipped his hat to me. "Morning, Jake. Got a call about a disturbance?" I gestured at the field. "Just planting my corn, Dan. Same as always." Karen interrupted, her voice shrill. "This man is trespassing and destroying my property value. I demand you arrest him." Danvers raised an eyebrow, looking between us. "Ma'am, this is Jake Harper's land. Been in his family since before I was born. You sure about this?" Karen's face flushed red. "That's impossible. My realtor said this view was protected. I paid for exclusivity." I snorted. "You paid for a house, lady. The land's mine. Got the deeds to prove it." Danvers sighed, clearly wishing he were anywhere else. "Let's see those deeds, Jake. Just to keep things official." I jogged to the house, grabbed the paperwork from Grandpa's old oak desk, and handed them over. Danvers skimmed them, nodded, and turned to Karen. "Ma'am, everything checks out. This is his property, and he's within his rights to farm it." Karen's jaw dropped. "This is outrageous. I'm calling my lawyer." She stormed off, her phone already back at her ear, probably dialing some poor attorney who'd regret taking her case. I thought that was the end of it. Danvers tipped his hat again, muttered something about city folk, and drove off. I went back to my corn, figuring Karen would sulk in her mansion and leave me be. I was wrong. The next morning, I woke to a commotion outside. A news van was parked on the road, and a young reporter with a microphone was standing next to Karen, who was in full performance mode, tears in her eyes, gesturing at my field like it was a war zone. "This man is ruining our community," she wailed. "This was supposed to be a peaceful retreat, and now we're forced to look at this." The reporter, a perky woman named Lisa from Channel 7, nodded sympathetically. "And you're saying this has impacted your business?" "Devastated it," Karen cried. "Who wants to meditate next to a farm?" I stepped outside, still in my flannel and work boots, and cleared my throat. "You folks know this is my land, right? Been farming it for generations." Lisa turned the microphone toward me, eager for a soundbite. "Sir, how do you respond to allegations that your farming is disrupting the neighborhood?" I chuckled. "I'm planting corn, not setting off fireworks. If she doesn't like the view, she can plant some trees on her side of the line." Karen's face went purple, but before she could retort, a new figure emerged from the news van, a man in his 60s, wiry and weathered, with a straw hat and a grin that spelled trouble. "Hold up, now," he said, his drawl thick as molasses. "I reckon I got something to add." Lisa swung the microphone his way. "And you are?" "Name's Amos," he said, tipping his hat. "I sold Miss Karen her land. Told her it was a prime spot, but I might have left out a few details." He winked at me, and my stomach did a flip. Amos was a local legend, a real estate shark who'd been flipping properties since before I was born. If he was here, things were about to get interesting. Karen's eyes widened. "What are you talking about?" Amos chuckled, pulling a folded document from his pocket. "See, when I sold you that plot, I mentioned the view was nice, but I didn't say it was protected. This here's farm country. Always has been. Jake's got every right to his corn. But there's more." He unfolded the paper, holding it up for the camera. "This is an easement agreement, signed by your predecessor. Says Jake's got access to a water line that runs through your property. Means he can cross your land whenever he needs to maintain it." Karen's mouth opened, but no sound came out. I felt a grin creeping onto my face. Grandpa had mentioned that easement years ago, but I'd never needed to use it. Until now. Lisa's eyes lit up, sensing a scoop. "So, you're saying Miss Karen's property is legally accessible to Mr. Harper?" "Yep," Amos said, grinning wider. "And if she tries to block him, she's violating the law. Ain't that right, Sheriff?" Danvers, who'd pulled up again after another frantic call from Karen, nodded. "That's correct, Amos. Jake's got legal access." Karen's face crumpled. "This is a conspiracy," she shrieked. "You're all in on it. I'll sue every last one of you." The camera caught every word, and I could already see the headlines. Entitled "Newcomer Tries to Stop Local Farmer, Gets Humiliated." Lisa wrapped up the segment, promising viewers an update, while Karen stormed back to her house, slamming the door so hard it echoed across the field. For a moment, I thought that was the end of it. Amos tipped his hat again and ambled off, whistling like he'd just won the lottery. I went back to my corn, figuring Karen would either move or build a taller fence. But she wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The next day, I arrived at the field to find my rose vandalized seedlings uprooted, dirt scattered like a toddler had thrown a tantrum. A note was pinned to a stake in the ground, written in Sharpie, "Stop now or else." I didn't need a detective to know who'd done it. My blood boiled, but I kept my cool. Grandpa's voice echoed in my head. "Don't fight fire with fire. Fight it with water." So I called Danvers again. He arrived with a deputy, surveyed the damage, and shook his head. "She's got some nerve," he muttered. "We'll handle this, Jake." They marched over to Karen's house, and I followed, keeping my distance. Through her massive windows, I could see her pacing, phone in hand, until Danvers knocked. She opened the door, all fake tears again, but he cut her off. "Ma'am, we've got evidence of vandalism on Jake's property. Security footage from his barn camera shows you out there last night." My jaw dropped. I didn't have a barn camera, but Karen didn't know that. Her face went white, and she stammered. "I was just inspecting my property." "After midnight?" Danvers said, crossing his arms. "With a shovel?" Karen's bravado collapsed. She started sobbing, real tears this time. "I just wanted my view. You don't understand how much I invested in this." Danvers wasn't moved. "You're looking at charges for criminal mischief, ma'am. Unless you'd rather settle this quietly with Jake." She turned to me, her eyes pleading. "Please, I'll pay for the damage. Just don't press charges." I crossed my arms, thinking of Grandpa's fields, his legacy. Fix my field. Pay for the seedlings. And don't ever step foot on my land again. She nodded, defeated. I thought that was the end of it. But life, like a good crop, has a way of surprising you. Karen kept her word, or so it seemed. The next morning, a landscaping crew arrived at my field, their trucks loaded with tools and fresh seedlings. They worked under her supervision, replanting every row she'd destroyed. She stood at the edge of her property, arms crossed, her face a mask of resentment. I watched from my porch, sipping coffee, wondering if this was truly the end or just a lull before another storm. The crew finished by noon, and Karen wrote me a check for the seedlings $500, more than enough. She didn't say a word, just thrust the paper at me and marched back to her McMansion. I figured she'd learned her lesson. But lessons, like seeds, don't always take root. A week passed without incident. My corn sprouted, tiny green shoots poking through the earth, a promise of summer's bounty. I fell back into my routine tending the fields, repairing fences, and dreaming of the day I'd sell my harvest at the county fair, just like Grandpa did. The news segment about Karen's meltdown had gone viral, racking up thousands of views online. Locals stopped by to laugh about it, bringing me pies and casseroles like I was some kind of folk hero. I didn't feel like one. I just wanted to farm in peace. Then came the twist I never saw coming. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a beat-up pickup truck rattled up my driveway. Out stepped a woman I didn't recognize, a mid-40s, wiry, with sun-leathered skin and a braid of graying hair. She carried a cardboard box under one arm and a wary look in her eyes. "You Jake Harper?" she asked, her voice rough but kind. "That's me," I said, stepping off the porch. "Can I help you?" She set the box down and extended a hand. "Name's Ellie. I'm Karen's sister." I froze, my hand halfway to hers. "Her sister?" Ellie nodded, her lips twitching into a half-smile. "Yeah, I know. Hard to believe, right? We ain't exactly cut from the same cloth." She gestured at her worn jeans and flannel shirt, a stark contrast to Karen's pristine tracksuits. "Heard about the mess she caused. Figured I owed you an apology." I shook her hand, still processing. "No offense, but your sister's got a funny way of being neighborly." Ellie laughed, a deep, raspy sound. "That's Karen for ya. Always been like that, thinks the world owes her a favor." But she wasn't always, she trailed off, her eyes distant. "Anyway, I brought you something." She nudged the box with her boot. "Open it." Curious, I knelt and peeled back the flaps. Inside were jars of homemade preserves, peach, strawberry, and blackberry, along with a loaf of fresh-baked bread wrapped in a checkered cloth. The scent alone made my mouth water. "You made all this?" I asked. "Yup," Ellie said, shrugging. "Run a little homestead about an hour from here. Karen don't talk about me much. Says I'm too country for her brand." She rolled her eyes. "But I heard what happened, and I wanted to make things right. Or at least try." I stood, touched by the gesture. "This is real kind, Ellie. You didn't have to." "Had to," she said firmly. "Family's gotta own up to family's mistakes. And there's something else you should know." She hesitated, glancing toward Karen's house. "She's in over her head. That yoga retreat? It's a pipe dream. She sank every penny into that place, thinking she'd be some kind of influencer guru. Now she's drowning in debt, and your farm's just the scapegoat." I frowned, the pieces clicking together. Karen's tantrums, her desperation, it wasn't just entitlement. It was panic. "Why's she talking it out on me?" Ellie sighed. "'Cause you're an easy target. She can't yell at the bank or her realtor, so she picks a fight with the guy planting corn. Classic Karen move." She paused, her eyes softening. "I'm not asking you to go easy on her. Just maybe don't hate her too much." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to stay angry Karen had vandalized my field, dragged my name through the mud. But Ellie's words stirred something else, a flicker of empathy I hadn't expected. I nodded. "Thanks for the heads up. And the food." Ellie tipped her hot-as straw one, like Amos Sand climbed back into her truck. "Take care, Jake. And if Karen acts up again, give me a call. I'll set her straight." She grinned, and I believed her. That night, I sat on my porch, eating Ellie's bread slathered with peach preserves, staring at Karen's house. Her windows glowed, but the place felt empty, like a stage set for a play no one was watching. I wondered what Grandpa would have done. He'd always said farming wasn't just about growing crops, it was about growing people, too. I wasn't sure Karen could be grown, but maybe, just maybe, there was a chance. The next day, I decided to try. I grabbed a jar of Ellie's preserves and walked over to Karen's gate. My plan was simple. Hand her the jar, say something neighborly, and see if we could bury the hatchet. But as I approached, I noticed something odd. Her front door was ajar, and there were voices inside. Loud ones. I hesitated, then knocked. The voices stopped, and Karen appeared, her face pale, her hair a mess. Behind her stood a man in a cheap suit, holding a clipboard. He looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. What do you want? Karen snapped, her voice brittle. I held up the jar. Brought you something. Thought we could talk. She stared at the jar like it was a bomb. Talk. After you humiliated me on TV? Get off my property. The man in the suit cleared his throat. Miss Thompson, we really need to finish this inspection. He glanced at me, apologetic. Bank's orders. Foreclosure process. My stomach dropped. Foreclosure? Ellie wasn't kidding about the debt. Karen's eyes darted between us, and for the first time, I saw real fear. Not anger, not entitlement fear. This is none of his business, she hissed, but her voice cracked. I backed away, jar still in hand. I'll leave you to it. Just thought you might like the preserves. I set the jar on her porch and walked home, my mind spinning. Karen wasn't just losing a fight with Mesh, was losing everything. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. Karen's yoga retreat signs came down, replaced by a for sale notice from the bank. I saw her once, loading boxes into her SUV, her movements slow, defeated. I wanted to feel vindicated, but all I felt was hollow. Grandpa's voice echoed again. Farming's about growth, not grudges. Then came the final twist, the one that cut deepest. One morning, I found a letter in my mailbox, no stamp, just my name scrawled on the envelope. Inside was a single page, written in Karen's neat hand. Jake, I'm leaving. You won't have to deal with me anymore. I was wrong about your farm, about everything. I thought I could start over here, be someone new, but I just made a mess. Ellie told me you tried to bring me something the other day. I'm sorry I didn't listen. I've never been good at that. I don't expect forgiveness, but I owe you this. I'm donating the easement money to the county fair in your grandfather's name. It's not much, but it's all I've got left. Take care of your land. It's more than just dirt. Karen. I read it twice, the words blurring. Karen, the woman who'd called 911 on me, who'd tried to ruin my field, was gone. And her last act was a check for $2,000 to honor my grandfather's legacy. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I did both. The corn grew tall that summer, the best crop I'd ever seen. At the fair, I sold every year, and the organizers announced the donation in Grandpa's name. The crowd clapped, and I felt him there, smiling. Ellie showed up, too, her truck piled with more preserves. She hugged me and said, "You did good, kid." Even with her. Karen's house sold to a young couple who loved the view of my fields. They brought over a pie, and we waved every morning. Life moved on, but I kept her letter in the oak desk, a reminder that people, like crops, can surprise you. Sometimes they grow in ways you never thought possible. Sometimes they wither. And sometimes, in the final moments, they leave behind a seed of something better. I don't know where Karen went, or if she'd ever find her place. But I hoped she would. Not for me, not for her. Because in the end, that's what farming's about, giving things a chance to grow, even when the soil feels too hard to try. What do you think of Jake's story? Was he right to stand his ground? Or should he have been more forgiving sooner? Was Karen's final act enough to redeem her? Or was it too little, too late? Share your thoughts below. I'd love to hear your perspective on who was right and who was wrong.